Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Commissioners meeting this morning on December 4th, 2019. We'll begin by doing our Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, we do, if we have anyone in the audience that does want to speak on something that is not in the agenda, you need to fill out a blue form now. We do have several people who have requested to speak, but that will be during our split zone amendment. So, just letting the netters know that that's when you'll be allowed to speak. We have a consent agenda?
For the consent agenda, I noticed that item number 2 is to be done as the 4-H governing body. So I'm proposing that we pull item number 2 and then convene as the 4-H district. And then just 2 slight edits on minutes. And I've got the one page set up, so I was able just to read them last night, and I didn't have it before this. So November 4th, we were talking about COIC stiff dollars, and then I had asked about the radio system, and I just proposed that on another subject, I'll kind of separate the last sentence, because I asked about a radio system procurement, but it wasn't associated with the stiff project. So I had some proposed words to that, nothing substantive. And then on November 12th, Thornburg remand appeal, there was a change for condition 17. Doesn't have anything to do with overnight units, or
No, that was already pointed out.
just FWNP instead of M, and I'm proposing that we just a little edit.
Okay, good.
And then also, I think I left the meeting during the discretionary grant phase too. I think I left at some point, so
Okay,
that's my other little note.
all right.
Nothing substantive. So with that, I'll move the consent agenda minus item number 2.
Okay, and I will second that motion. Further discussion? No? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair, yes. Okay, so then we need to go to item 2, and I believe we need to reconvene as, let's see, what is it? The Deschutes County 4-H Extension District.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, James. Would you care to identify yourself for the record?
Yes. I'm James Wood, the accounting manager, Deschutes County.
Okay.
So it's pretty self-explanatory. It's simple transfer appropriation, kind of the budget process for the specific amount. And as I say, I did notice it says as Deschutes County Service District, so that's why we did this. So I don't have any other questions. That's my point. I mean, it was just.
You might want to explain it for the audience, though.
Oh, absolutely.
That would be appreciated.
So, recently, there's been a $1 million loan that was approved and signed by the board and Extension 4-H that helped to finance the new building that was put out by the airport in Redmond for Extension 4-H. And along with this is a payment stream that's going to be coming in from Extension 4-H to the county. And so what was originally budgeted in fiscal year 20's budget as a transfer from Extension 4-H to itself into reserves for this future expansion, we're now taking that and converting it into a debt service payment that'll be paid to Deschutes County, the entity.
Okay. Any further questions?
Nope. With that, I'll move board signature of resolution number 2019-056, the resolution transferring the appropriation.
And I will second that motion. Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair? Yes. Thank you, James. Okay, next on our agenda is Tim, Mr. Shemke.
Reconvening as the board.
Oh, yes, reconvening as the Board of County Commissioners.
Good morning. I'm Tim Shimke. I'm the Director of the Department of Solid Waste. It's time, once again, to construct another cell at the landfill. This would be cell number 8, which is the first of the 3 remaining cells to be constructed at Knott Landfill. We have solicited for bids, received a number of bids. I think 1,
7.
2, 3, 7.
Yes.
And the apparent low bidder is Scarselli Brothers Incorporated for $4.2 million. This is a very good bid. And the bids were pretty darn tight. 4.2, the next lowest bid was 4.3. After that, 4.9. So we like those nice tight bids. About $1 million below our engineer's estimate.
Yes.
Which is a little bit surprising. And I think looking at these numbers here, it's the excavation. There's a lot of it there, and we got some really good numbers. And that's typically why we bid these at this time of the year. So they move in here in December or January. Typically a very slow time for dirt movers, and we get good numbers. They're keeping their crews busy, and we get really good numbers. So we're really pleased with this. Scarselli Brothers is a very, very large company out of Seattle. They do a wide range of work. Typically, we're dealing with companies that kind of specialize in landfill construction. And although they do a wide variety of work, Scarselli Brothers does do landfill construction. Our engineer has worked with Scarselli at other sites on cell construction. So they've got a great reputation, and we're very pleased to have them as the apparent low bidder. The notice of intent to award, if you approve, we'll start a 7-day protest period where other bidders may lodge a protest. If there is no protest lodged in that 7 days, then award of contract happens administratively. There's no need to come back for you guys for approval. Any questions? Just one more point. You might remember late in the budget process, because our engineer thought that this was going to run over $5 million, and that's what we have in the budget, $5 million. We modified the budget so that if we needed to, we could transfer $1 million out of the closure fund into the capital fund to cover the project. Obviously, it looks like we will not be needing to tap into that closure fund. We're keeping our options open because you never know what happens once the project starts. But at $4.2 million, I'm very comfortable that we're going to come within our budget.
I thought it was interesting that there were only 2 Oregon companies, one from Bend and one from Salem, that actually gave a bid out of the 7. So, it's unfortunate that we can't keep the job really local, but $1 million is a lot of capital in order that we're going to be keeping on our balance sheet.
Yeah, we've had one local company do one cell for us, but beyond that, it's always been either out of Central Oregon, but more likely out of state. Again, those companies, most of them very specialized in doing landfill cells, and so it's hard for a local company to kind of break into that and do that.
How long of a project will that be once it starts?
This, they'll move the dirt through the winter, and if we get favorable weather, that'll be done fairly quickly. The liner system when you install is really weather dependent, and so the plan is that in April they'll lay the liner system down. The project is scheduled to be completed by June 1, so that we're taking waste here before the end of June. And I think we're a year earlier than scheduled for this cell. We do have some room left, but I didn't think we had enough room to push this out another year, so we're going a little bit early this go around.
Yeah. Just kind of the annual weather cycle. It's
Yeah.
time to make a decision. And it looks like it's part of that mobilization is one of the big items in there. It swings by $100,000 or $200,000 even. Yeah, I mean, they may just have their equipment in Central Oregon or whatever the story is. Yeah.
Right. And you never know what mobilization tends to be a place where contractors will typically put their profit.
Yeah.
So, it's not necessarily correlates with how far they got to come, how they structure their bid, varies.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert in
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I know, just big picture, so kind of a horseshoe around the center for gas collection and the controls or whatever. So this is just working our way up one side now?
Yeah, we kind of made the turn. The remaining is just 2 more cells, back to the east, basically, to the fence line when we get done.
Is there a rock shelf to be dealt with in this?
All the way through, yes.
Yeah, so,
A lot of rock has been moved by Taylor, on the big projects in the southeast area of Bend. That relationship is now ended. We wanted to make sure we had enough rock for our uses, for the road department uses as well. And so, although we may consider outside contractors to help us with some of that rock work, we're gonna go slow and make sure we don't short ourselves.
yeah. Okay, well, with that, I'll move, I think, chair signature of document number 2019-810, intent to award contract for Cell 8 construction to Scarcella Brothers.
And I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shimke? Okay, now we have consideration of approval to the partners with Fuze for the grants for the benefit of the homeless individuals. Good morning.
Molly Wells-Darling from Intensive Adult Outpatient Services.
George Conway, Health Services. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. We are here to talk with you about a grant that we are hoping to be a partner on with an organization by the name of Fuze in our community. Fuze is Frequent Users System Engagement, which is a nonprofit organization that came together, I'm not sure how many years ago.
It was actually incorporated about a year ago.
About a year ago. And they are focusing on resources to provide housing and supportive services for people experiencing long-term homelessness to improve community health, safety, and stability. A grant opportunity became available through SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is a federal grant. But it has to be a nonprofit organization that applies for the grant. So Fuze is applying for that grant and is hoping to contract with us to provide the services that will be paid for through that grant. The grant is a 5-year grant, $400,000 each year. The intention is to hire 3 positions: a project director who will do a lot of community education, working with the community to build resources, and then also case management, and then 2 peer support specialists for a total of 3 FTE. What those peer support specialists will do is reach out into the community, go out into the homeless camps, go out into the different sites where they can connect with people experiencing homelessness and identify people who are not only homeless but also have a substance use disorder or a severe mental illness or a co-occurring disorder, which for the purpose of this grant is substance use and mental illness. They'll link with them, try to engage them, walk alongside with them to get them hopefully linked into services for either their mental illness or their substance abuse disorder, and then also work with them to connect with our case managers to help apply for entitlements, benefits in order to have Oregon Health Plan, food stamps, etc., and then work with them to get into housing. I think those are the key points of the grant itself. So what we are asking for is approval to partner with Fuze if they were to get that grant in order to hire these FTE. The FTE would be completely paid for by the grant itself.
And they'd be soft positions, it'd be term limited, contingent upon funding.
Great.
When's the deadline of the, we'll know if we get the grant or not, do you know?
April.
April 1st?
April 30th.
30th?
And then we have 4 months to get everything into place.
Okay, because I noticed this year wasn't, we weren't looking at that much money being spent this year.
Right.
Okay.
And I've heard of Fuze before. They were applying for housing funds, I know in the Central Oregon area, and I think it's a Bend effort very specifically. But, and this is a permanent supportive housing effort, I think is the terminology, because the other path is rapid rehousing. And, anybody can be in any scenario in their lives, but permanent supportive housing are folks that, let's just get you somewhere, get you stabilized, and, this may be the long-term solution. And rapid rehousing with a developing situation, somebody could get in, stabilize, get a job, and be able to be independent and on their own. So I think the Fuze effort is the long-term supportive housing, and this would provide those, on-the-ground folks, it sounds like. Interesting, so they're applying for these dollars, and they're basically all would be implemented by Deschutes County, I think.
Deschutes County and Best Care. So Best Care will be a partner in this as well because of their expertise in substance use and the connections that this would provide. So there will be a peer from Best Care that will work with this team as well, going out into the camps and then connecting them with Best Care services, both inpatient and outpatient and other substance use treatment.
So Molly, do you have a number that we're thinking of for the homeless? I mean, I know what the count was like a year ago, or this year in January, for Deschutes County, but do we have any idea how many people they think they can be working with? I mean, for these, for the severe mental illness?
So the scope, the focus of what was the Fuze Coalition for a number of years, which was more centered on Bend, but then Fuze was incorporated as Central Oregon Fuze with the intended scope being the 3 counties. In the near future, there's distributed housing that there's currently vouchers being sought. So they're hoping to place between 6 and 9 people in the next few months. So that would be the initial service population. This group would also assist the outreach that's trying to obtain vouchers for distributed housing. And then in the next 2 to 3 years, there's a hope of starting a centrally located facility that would house on the order of 30 or 40 people, and the fundraising and the trajectory is intent upon that. So when you add that, the people that hope to have vouchers in the next 2 or 3 years, plus the people that we're trying to assist to find housing, the total service population for this, the population to be served directly by the grant funds would be somewhere between 60 and 100 persons. And then some of them, if we're fortunate and they move out and that they've gotten employment and whatnot, there might be some recycling of that volume.
Okay. Any further questions?
So this is a partnership. I mean, so this isn't an application by Deschutes County for a grant, but its authorization is if the grant comes through, Deschutes County would hire those grant-supported positions. Is there a document contract or
Commissioners, you suggest this is an application, approval to apply. The timing sounds like it would work out well if we receive the grant. Next April is when we're putting together the budget for FY21. So at that point, we would add the positions into the proposed budget that would be reviewed. I'm not sure what the expected start date of the folks would be. I suppose it's possible that it could begin this fiscal year before the end of June, in which case we'd have to come back with a budget adjustment to add a small amount of FTE appropriation into the current fiscal year. But either way, it would be in next year's budget. There may be an actual grant agreement. There would be an MOU, I think we discussed, between the parties that would lay out the expectations. So that would have to come back to you for approval as well. So there's at least one, probably 2 or 3 steps before this would get built into the county's appropriation and ready to go.
Yes, per the schedule we've been given, it does look like, hopefully, if it's actually allocated at the end of April, we can actually do something before our year end in July. So July 1st. So that would be good.
Well, I'm supportive. As I said, is there a motion at this point, or just kind of supportive to go forwards?
It'd just be
The business will come back.
authority to apply for the grant. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll make a motion to partner with the Fuze for applying for the grant for, to benefit of homeless individuals.
And I will second that motion. Any further comments? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Adair, yes. Thank you very much,
There you go.
and
Thank you.
let's hope we get it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Dr. Conway. Okay. Next on our agenda is the outdoor mass gathering permit. And Kyle, I don't think you're aware, but Commissioner Henderson is not going to be here today. So do we need to officially reschedule this until next Wednesday's board meeting? Is that how we should do it, Dave?
If that's the direction of the board, yeah, you could certainly deliberate today, begin deliberations, continue them till next week. You could delay in total till next week. There's a quorum of you. You could deliberate and make a decision today if you chose to as well. So you have those options.
Okay.
So this is, yeah, mass gathering permit item at this point in time. It does boil down to, I'll just talk through what I'm seeing here. It boils down to, just a couple pages, and it's the conditions of approval, and this is kind of a mature process right now, I guess. Where's the latest? And we've seen this, the conditions and the permit a few times over the years. Are there any specific word changes from last year? I guess there's,
Yeah, for the record, Kyle Collins, Associate Planner, Deschutes County Community Development. The only changes from last year's permit correspond with the access to the site prior to the actual start of the permit window in order to stage materials on site and receive deliveries there. No additional changes were made.
and that was, we got that very specific feedback as the couple days before the event last year. Hey, I saw somebody out there in a truck dropping off something, and it's before the permit. So this is in response to that.
Correct.
And I know that the county did respond, Sheriff's Office, Community Development. There was quite a flurry of activity about, 4 or 5 days before the event. So that is response to that. So I'm just letting you know, Commissioner, I mean, this is a pretty mature process just because we've done it a few times at this site. It always is kind of heart-wrenching to hear the effects from the neighbors on this location. It has been, optimized, moved the stage a little bit, and there's still resistance from, some folks living in the area. And as I say, I always feel bad that that's, the response to this, but this is, event permitting, state legislatively defined process. The answer is yes, with conditions kind of going into this. And, so I mean, I'm supportive of the proposed permit at this time. I don't know if you want to get there, if you want to wait for Commissioner Henderson or not.
I do feel it would be appropriate to wait for Commissioner Henderson. Reading over the reports in the file, they are holding, I know, they're holding it at a location on the 150 acres. They're using 75 of those acres, which, according to the letter from Pepe, their legal staff said that they wanted it to stay there. And yet we heard from a family that have their personal residence is less than 1,000 feet from the music festival, and they have an excessive number of animals. So I just feel that it would be appropriate to wait for Commissioner Henderson to make his comments on this. I, as an animal owner of horses that pay attention to what's happening out there, I can understand where if you've got music going on and it's going on like all day and night, and with restrictions, of course, I just think it would be appropriate to have Commissioner Henderson here. He was concerned just about fire, and I think he wanted to make a few comments on that. So, therefore, I would like to postpone it until the 11th? The 11th on our agenda that day, Kyle. Does that work for your schedule?
It does indeed.
Okay, all right.
And then if there's, I guess that would put us in a spot if there's any substantive feedback from a commissioner. Is there opportunity to, I don't know, have the applicant propose changes? Or, I mean, I don't know, what is, I mean, because it's pretty mature is what I'm seeing here. And I don't know that, if there's
Oh, no.
a request to move, so I
I'm
don't know
not,
what
I'm
could
not asking to
happen.
move. I'm just saying that maybe they've already had one person move from this neighborhood because of this festival. It will be the 4th year there. And so there's definitely, what do you, it's, okay, it's a state
I guess
regulation.
My thought is there a way for the applicant to communicate with the commissioner directly? It's not quasi judicial, or is it? So that's my thought, get some communication before we meet next time, if there's concerns.
Well, the public hearing was closed on this, and the record, I believe, is closed at this point in time. So what's left now is deliberations by the board, and then your direction on the final language of the permit. Certainly, if anybody's aggrieved by that permit, they have appeal options through circuit court, and it's on an expedited timeline there. Unless you were to reopen the hearing, it's certainly an option the board would have if a majority of you wanted to reopen the hearing to allow the applicant or any persons interested to address any new conditions that the board might be inclined to impose. You could do that as well. So that would be an option at that point in time.
I'm just thinking, if we're not doing it today and we're going to bring it back, it's really a kind of a static situation with the application, public hearing, and, I guess the permit could change slightly if there was,
Could there be a small little tweak to it? Is that possible?
with the static record at this point, the
Right.
fact that we've had a public hearing and the information before us. But yeah, there could be a change to the permit.
The conditions themselves could be altered slightly, and additional conditions could be imposed, but the actual record itself is set at this juncture.
Right. I don't know what Commissioner Henderson, his message referenced fire. And, that's something that we in Deschutes County got through this last summer more fortunately than other summers. And so I think he just wanted to say something about that.
Yeah, well,
So-
that's fine. I'm just thinking
Yeah.
through the process. So if there was a condition change, that's really the tool we have at this point. Yeah.
So, 7 days isn't that long to wait, I hope.
Okay.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Just to be clear for the record then, so the board is continuing this deliberation until a week from today?
Yes. Thank you, Dave. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Tanya Saltzman, Associate Planner, Deschutes County Community Development. This is the time and place for a hearing on file number 247-19-000532TA concerning text amendments to allow the division of split-zone properties that contain floodplain zoning. The Board of County Commissioners will hear oral testimony, receive written testimony, and consider the testimony submitted at this hearing. The hearing is also being recorded. The board may make a decision on this matter today, continue the public hearing to a date certain, or leave the written record, open for a specified period of time. The hearing will be conducted in the following order. Staff will give a brief report on the issue. We will then open the hearing to all present and ask people to present testimony at one of the tables or here at the podium. You can also provide the commission with a copy of written testimony. Questions to and from the chair may be entertained at any time at the chair's discretion. Cross-examination of people testifying will not be allowed. However, if any person wishes to ask a question of another person during that person's testimony, please direct your question to the chair after being recognized. The chair is free to decide whether or not to ask such questions of the person testifying. Prior to the commencement of the hearing, any party may challenge the qualifications of any commissioner for conflict of interest. This challenge must be documented with specific reasons supported by facts. Should any commissioner be challenged, the member may disqualify him or herself, withdraw from the hearing, or make a statement on the record of their capacity to hear and decide this issue. At this time, do any members of the board need to set forth any information that may be perceived as a conflict of interest?
I do not.
I have none.
Oh, does any commissioner? Well,
I guess it's the same thing.
Yes. Does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I have none.
And I have none. Okay. Tanya?
Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner based on conflicts of interest?
Okay. As no challenges are presented, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief report.
Thank you. Just to give a basic introduction of the 2019 floodplain amendments, there's 3 components of them this year. Today, we're dealing with one of them. That's the land division of split zone properties, file number 532 TA. The floodplain land is open space in cluster and PUDs. That's been temporarily tabled. And the third, the model flood amendments, were actually adopted just before Thanksgiving on November 25th. And I should note for anybody watching this that all of these floodplain amendments were initiated by planner Nicole Mardell, who has since left the county, and I am picking up where she left off, so in case anyone's confused as to who I am. The project purpose is to allow division of split zone properties that contain floodplain zoning. A split zone property is a property that might have 2 different base zones. Summary of the amendments. So to divide an eligible split-zoned floodplain property, it must contain exclusive farm use zoning and an underlying agricultural comprehensive plan designation. It must bisect or be adjacent to a piped irrigation canal or lateral. It must meet the EFU minimum lot size requirements for partitioning. It must not be located in a wildlife area combining zone or significant riparian habitat as defined in ordinance number 94-007. And finally, floodplain zone land must remain intact after that division. This has gone by the Planning Commission. There were public hearings on August 8th, September 12th, and September 26th. Deliberations occurred on October 10th.
Question.
Yes.
So there's kind of 3 parts to this. Were these thought of as those 3 parts through that whole process, or did they kind of evolve through that? Do you know?
I believe they all started out together and then took separate paths. I think some of them overlapped on those 3 dates.
Yeah, so is there any more clarity on that, kind of where it kind of forked off? Just from the Planning Commission's point of view is my thought, because I know it was more of a complete package as the starting point.
If I may, Madam Vice Chair, Commissioner Damone, for the record, Peter Gutowski, Deschutes County Planning Manager. So they did start off as 3 amendments with essentially 3 separate hearings before the Planning Commission, all under one evening. And it was done deliberately just because of our prior experience with the floodplain amendments.
And that kind of answers my question.
Okay,
So
'cause I can
piece
get
that
into more
This piece
specificity.
that we're talking about was always kind of documented as
Correct.
an individual piece.
Correct.
That was my question. Thank you.
It's been a long and winding road.
Oh, yeah.
Winding.
Well, and I was just wondering if it evolved at the Planning Commission, but it was.
I will go into some detail on that, on this these specific amendments, yes. So following those October 10th deliberations, there were some concerns from stakeholders, some of whom are in the audience today, regarding just the eligibility criteria for these properties, and as well as concerns for environmental resources, for Goal 5 resources. So there was some discussion amongst those stakeholders, and we believe that some consensus was achieved, and the amendments were revised to those that I described earlier in my presentation. It's a much narrower scope than initially proposed, but this is where the Planning Commission left it. And the result of that is on November 14th, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve those revised amendments. And those amendments are in your packet, along with the entire record, actually. So the next steps. The board can continue the hearing to a date certain, close the oral record, keep the written record open to a date certain, or close both the oral and the written record and schedule deliberations. And with that, I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Great. No questions here.
None? No questions? We do have several people that have requested to speak at this time, so is this a time for them to come up? I do have 2 people. If anyone else wants to speak, you need to fill out a blue form, please. Thank you very, very much. Teresa and Fred Nutter, would you like to come up and address the issue, please?
I'd like to thank the commission for timely consideration of this, considering just a few weeks ago it got past the planning commission. I was surprised to see it up in front of you guys this quick, and I thank you for that. This has been an ongoing process for us for 3 years or more, and I think we're starting to see some light in the end of the tunnel, and I appreciate it. I think you all understand from previous meetings that you've had that what exactly is involved for us. There is one other thing I would bring up, and that is that years ago, we took care of my mother in her declining years, and that was possible because of the fact that there was a second house on the property, and we could do that. Now, the possibility exists in a thing like this where we could probably get a hardship or something to do that. But again, that's just another process. Having another house on our own land would be a lot better deal. Putting a farm-related dwelling on there, we probably wouldn't qualify for that because our limitations are getting to the point where we wouldn't be materially involved in the farming, and that would exclude us from being able to be on a farm-related dwelling. So this is really the only real option for us, is to have that available to us by being able to do a land division. And I appreciate you hearing us.
Fred?
Thank you.
No.
Did you want to say anything?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Teresa, for coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate your patience, and hopefully, anyway, we're thinking good thoughts. Okay. And we do have Liz Funcher? Is that? Fancher. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't write anymore.
That's I know. I'm like,
Lost the ability to
it
do
looks
that.
a bit French, but not.
Just type right real
Yes,
fast.
That's correct. Yes. I'm here today to represent the Netters. They weren't sure they were going to make it here, so they asked me to attend the meeting. And I looked at the packet that I downloaded, and I didn't see Nicole's memo to the Planning Commission in there. I suspect it's in there, but just wanted to make sure we're talking about the same amendment. I didn't see a language for the sort of compromise language that was negotiated by staff between the various parties involved, including Central Oregon Land Watch. So I just have a copy of that. This is what was in there? Oh, okay, great. So they got that. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't find it. Okay. So anyway, so I guess you have the text in front of you, which is helpful. What this is a very narrow change to the zoning code to basically patch an interpretive problem created, or a problem created by an interpretation of the county's zoning code over the years, because of the fact that the floodplain zone is a zoning district, and the land that it's put on top of is also a zoning district, and the land that the comprehensive plan designation underneath it is generally the same as one of the two zonings and not the other. So like in this instance, the underlying comprehensive plan designation is agricultural, and that applies despite the fact that floodplain zoning applies to the property. And in terms of the Netters property, they had floodplain zoning on their property because there used to be basically a canal lateral that crossed their property. And so the federal government just put that on their property. The lateral was piped and it's off of their property now, but there's really no process for getting rid of that particular designation except to go through a plan amendment and zone change. And in order to obtain that, you have to go through a mapping process through the federal government, and it turned out we had to map all the way back to the reservoir. And so basically that made it impossible to change, to take off the floodplain zoning, and the Netters needed to live with it. In the past, floodplain zoning was viewed as an overlay zone in terms of land division approvals, and the county applied the rules for the agricultural zone to a division in the floodplain zone and treated that land as if its zoning matched the comprehensive plan designation. So the property across the street that's owned by Mr. Thalacker received approval for the type of division that the Netters are requesting, to have 2 home sites on the property on what are called non-farm parcels, and to have the rest of the property remain in farm use. And so basically this would allow the Netters to do what the Thalackers were allowed to do under the county's prior interpretation. The county has approved land divisions of that type in many places throughout the county. This is probably one of the few remaining properties where this is an issue. There are a few others in this general area. So I think it is a narrow scope. The prior proposal on the split zoning was to provide this sort of a fix for all properties. And this is really narrow, just to apply to the exclusive farm use and floodplain zone and where there was a canal issue. The rest of the properties are all related to rivers by and large and involve different legal issues. So this would allow them to go forward. If you want to then address the other issues on split zoning for the other properties, you can certainly do that. But we would ask that you please adopt and approve this amendment. And it would be very, very helpful if you would do this as soon as you possibly can, because the legislature is meeting again next year, and it's our understanding that there are going to be proposals to significantly change a lot of the rules to make it very, very difficult for people to obtain approval of non-farm dwellings. And in the past, the Department of Land Conservation and Development had decided that it was a good idea to make it really difficult for people to get farm dwellings on farm properties and to push them into the non-farm area. And in Central Oregon, the idea is that farmers would be able to put their non-farm dwelling, their houses on the bad parts of the property. And that's how the law is currently set up, and that's what the Netters want to do. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So the bad part of the property referring to less productive, rocky.
Part that's never been used for farm use. Yeah, they have really good farm property, but they do have a section of it that was near where the canal was that's really terrible, and it's never been used for farm use. Not irrigated, dry.
Yep.
It's bad. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Liz. Are there any other parties that want to comment at this time? Okay. Seeing none. Commissioner Henderson, do you have any comment? Should we wait for Commissioner Henderson, or do you think what do you think about, should we keep it open, keep it closed?
Public hearing, there hasn't been any request for a written record, period, it looks like, by any parties. So, so I support closing the record.
Closing it?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, now we've worked on this, or at least our staff has worked on this for a long time, so. And I know that the Netters have worked on this for 3 years. So is that a motion then, or?
Well, just kind of a statement.
You can just direct that the records, that the
Okay.
hearing and the record are closed, and now it's in the board's hands for deliberations. You can begin deliberations today, you can do it next week at some time certain, but yeah, you will need to deliberate and give staff direction.
Okay, all right. So,
Yeah, I do support the written and oral record closed, and scheduling deliberations is, with Commissioner Henderson here, I'm going to be more
okay. Then,
appreciative, I'm sure,
so on the 11th, and then we could,
Yeah, if we want to set a date, yeah.
okay. The 11th is going to be a special day.
There you go.
Hopefully that's soon enough, don't you think?
Wonderful.
So, staff, next week, the 11th? Great. Thank you, Tanya, for taking over.
And just to be clear for the record, so the hearing and the record are closed. The board will take this up a week from today for deliberations.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Okay. Has anyone looked at the forecast for December 11th?
Your deliberations on Lower Bridge are scheduled for that day.
Oh, good, okay. And Sterling Drive. Okay, I meant like blizzard
we'll be
forecast
able
or
to drive in that
anything.
day, yeah.
I just wanted,
Well, it's a whole day, though. If we start at 10.
we can come the day before, right?
afternoon,
We can just
too.
stay Tuesday night.
There you go.
I know. Have you ever had to do that?
No, but I should have. One time I went south and there was a traffic accident, iced up roads. I got home at 2 in the morning and I should have just got a room that night. And I could see it was going to be bad. So I've never gotten a room here, but I should have.
Okay. Eric, did you have something?
The forecast?
Yes, please. The forecast for the 11th.
I
Since
have 47, considerable cloudiness with occasional rain showers.
47?
degrees.
High of 47.
Okay.
Dry by then.
Chance of rain 40%, and then that night,
Rain.
rain showers.
Okay.
It'll be
Thank
even
you.
warmer, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
There we go. Drivable conditions.
Okay, thank you. I just was wondering, you know, if you're setting something up like the day, and there is a blizzard, but, you know. Okay, Peter.
Item number 12.
Yes, we're at item number 12.
Madam Vice Chair, and Commissioner DeBoe, again for the record, Peter Gutowski, Deschutes County Planning. In light of this, so this issue, as both of you were debriefed on Monday, is in a position for your deliberations, and in light of Chair Henderson's absence, I'm presuming that the board's desire is to schedule this for on the 11th, albeit it'll be somewhat of a busy agenda, but that's certainly a date that's available. It doesn't have to be on the 11th if you want to push it out a little bit to give the December calendar some more flexibility. But anyway, you have plenty of options today. You can commence deliberations. You can defer it to a date that the full commission is available and at the dais. We don't need to name a date certain. Staff can just work with Sharon to ensure that the three commissioners are available. So truly, staff is flexible in terms of what your desires are, especially going into next week. I know there is a reconsideration hearing on marijuana production. So you do have some.
Sterling Drive, are we talking?
It is Sterling Drive, I believe. Yeah,
Right.
That's right. So again, staff is very flexible. I want to be mindful of your agenda, not just as it pertains to land use. So it's really the board's discretion.
What does December 18th look like?
It's actually pretty light.
Is it light? Because I do find this issue very important, and I would really like to make some kind of headway with it before the year end, if the 18th looked better. Will you be here, Mr. Kotowski?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Staff, I am here on the 18th, and I can tell you two other land use items, but it sounds like it's light on other matters. There's a road naming public hearing process that should be pretty straightforward. There's a placeholder for deliberations to talk about Lower Bridge and that planned unit development proceeding. So again, I'm here on the 18th and can certainly bring this back. I presume Adam will be here as well. So again. We're pretty flexible.
Okay, that's right, because Adam wasn't here today. So
On the 18th, Adam will be in Justice Court in Redmond that morning. We could potentially move that if that's a problem. So I'll just point that out.
Okay. Commissioner DeBonne?
I was ready for deliberations, but if we're putting it off, I'm available the 11th and the 18th, so I'm not too worried about it. Let's
Okay.
try it for one of those 2 dates is my point.
Okay.
So
Well, if the
it sounds
11th
like-
looks too booked, then we should go to the 18th, I think.
That's fine.
Okay. I'll coordinate with Sharon, and we'll put it on the 18th and see you in 2 weeks. Great. All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay. Do we have any other items this morning?
I have one little thing, but yeah, if Tom has anything. Well, just, so the Oregon Business Summit is on the 16th in Portland. There was a request, as the district chair, I got a call yesterday, a request for inviting another community member to join us at a leadership dinner afterwards. And it boiled down to the fact that if somebody comes and join us, that, may be prudent to not drive home afterwards. So I'm requesting that maybe the county buy a hotel room for somebody. So it's just something that could happen, and it hasn't even been finalized yet. But it kind of came to an obvious conclusion that if we offer somebody to come to a leadership dinner, ask them to drive to Portland, probably shouldn't ask them to drive home that night or pay for their hotel room. So it's just acknowledging, make sure there's support for that discussion. It's not even finalized. I don't even have a name yet, but just letting you know that that might come around. So
Okay.
let's leave it at that for now, and I'll let you know next time if something matures.
Okay. Great. No, that sounds like, yes, if you're going to have dinner, who needs to drive over government
Yeah, exactly.
camp
That's what
on a Monday night?
And yeah, so then I talked to Tom about it. It's like, I'd never offered to buy a hotel room for somebody as a commissioner before, but that's why it's this setting is official
Okay.
business of us, just making sure I'm not working past something that you'd expect.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Commissioners, just a heads up on a couple things. We should have a couple of agreements for you to review as soon as Monday. Dave's been involved also. We've got looks like we're very close to having a operating agreement for the warming shelter. So with Neighbor Impact, so we'll have that in front of you on Monday, hopefully, as well as a proposed donation agreement with the city of Redmond on the 4017 property. Both would be there. We talked about Black Butte Ranch a little bit on Monday, so I'm going to defer that until next week also. Also next week, we'd like to ask for you three to decide on chair and vice chair for next year. We're starting to put documents together that requires us, have the proper signature block down there, so we'll ask for you to discuss that and provide us direction. Also, I sent you an email earlier this morning with a draft response to a media inquiry, so I'd ask you when you get a chance today to have a look at that and give me any input that you might have. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I guess I missed that email. I'll check it out.
We'll have time after this meeting.
Yes, we should have time. I have time to read all, 2,000 pages that we need to read. Dave, did you have anything you wanted to comment today?
Tom grabbed it. The thing I was going to push on was the identifying the chair and the vice chair. We do have a number of documents starting to pile up that we have to have signature blocks and know who's who. So if that can be done next week, that'd be sure great, helpful to us.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Oh, Eric, what about the veterans? Tom said there's possibly a pilot coming up?
Yes, we're going to start in January.
January? Okay, the first week of January?
Yes.
Fabulous. Do you know the hours?
I don't yet.
5 days.
Monday through Friday.
Great. Fabulous. Thank you so very much. That means a lot to the community. Okay, therefore, I believe we're adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you so much.